So let us start the session by chanting Omkaram thrice. First, sit properly with your back straight, neck and back erect. Close your eyes. Inhale deeply and chant Omkara. Slowly rub your palms. Place it on your face. Massage your eyes and face. Slowly and gently open your eyes. Look at your palms. Release your hands. Namaste. Very good evening to one and all. And thank you for tuning in for today's session. And I also thank Consult Living for giving me this opportunity to share my knowledge about yoga on this International Yoga Day. And I also wish each and every one of you the International Yoga Day. So let us start today's session. As I've already told you, those who have joined for today's session, so for them, in order to benefit them, I'll start with recap what we have dealt with yesterday. So let us start with this. So directly I'll go for the history of yoga. So history of yoga is very ancient. It can be traced back to 5,000 years old. It can be found through in seals near Indus Valley civilization, where a place called Mohenjo-daro. You can find some seals of yogic postures, and also Lord Pashupatinath is also there, which is famous temple in Nepal. And yoga is also mentioned in Rig Veda. So these all evidences trace back to the vast and rich heritage of yoga in our Indian subcontinent. Okay, next is, this is the seal where you can see a yogi sitting under a meditative posture and meditating. So I guess by today everyone of you would know, right, the Yoga Sutras of Yoga Sutras, that is called Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. These are the foundations for yoga. So yoga is defined by sage Patanjali. So what is yoga? So many people have different definitions for yoga, but what is authentic definition of yoga? It is defined in Yoga Sutras of Patanjali in chapter 1, verse 2. It defines yoga as an of modification of mind. That is, in our mind we have mental modes. Our mental modes either make us to think about the future or trace us back to the past. Hence we always engage ourselves either anticipating for the future or sorrowing about the past. Hence we are unable to live our present moment fully. So that is what happens when most people suffer because of that. Hence, by practicing of yoga, you can be mindful of yourself, where you can stay present and enjoy each and every moment of your life. So that is what yoga is all about. according to Patanjali Maharshi. So next, according to Bhagavad Gita, yoga is defined as Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. In second chapter, 48th verse, you can find this. So it is equanimity of mind is the ultimate objective of yoga. That is, whatever situation you are in your life, you should be able to make yourself calm, composed, and stable. That is what yoga is according to Bhagavad Gita. There are many definitions in Bhagavad Gita, but I only took two out of them because of the paucity of time. And another definition is yoga karmasu kaushalam. This is in chapter 2, verse 15. It is most applicable for us because yoga is skill in action. So whatever work you do, if you are skillful in it, that is called yoga. But how can you be skillful? When you join your both body and mind together, when you perform any task, and that task would be skillful. Yes or no? Yes, right? So that is what yoga is all about. So next, we're going to discuss about types of yoga. There are many types of yoga, but we are not going to deal with all of them. But instead, we're going to deal with four most important yoga types. That is, first one is Ashtanga Yoga or called Raja Yoga. Second one is Bhakti Yoga. It is also called Yoga of Devotion. Third one is Karma Yoga, Yoga of Action. Fourth one is Jnana Yoga, Yoga of Knowledge. These are the four types of yoga which are very important. Whereas there are still other types of yoga like Kundalini Yoga, Mantra Yoga, etc. But we are not going to deal with them at this webinar. In future webinars, we will see about them also. So what is Ashtanga Yoga? Ashtanga Yoga was designed by sage Patanjali. Ashta, 8 angas means limbs. It has 8 limbs. So the 8 limbs are Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So these are the 8 limbs for Ashtanga Yoga. And out of these 8 limbs, first 5 limbs are Bahiranga Yoga, which we can practice externally. Whereas the last 3 are Antaranga Yoga, which you need to practice internally. So Yama and Niyamas are moral obligation, the do nots and do's, what you should not do, or which you should do, or which you should not do. Like you should not hurt anyone. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha comes under Yama. Niyama is something you should do. Saucha is cleanliness. Saucha, Santosha, Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana. These are all called niyamas, which you should do. And next comes asana. Asana is a posture. Stiram Sukham Asanam. If you're sitting comfortably and stable, that is asana according to Patanjali Maharshi. Next is pranayama. Pranayama is controlling of the breath. Prana is a vital force. Yama is control. Control of vital force is called pranayama. Next, pratyahara. Pratyahara is withdrawal of senses from the external objects. Next one is dharana, is intense focus on one object, single pointedness, which is called dharana. Dhyana is ripening of dharana is called dhyana, where you go into the deeper states of meditation. Samadhi is almost like super consciousness, where you merge with the object with which you are doing meditating. So samadhi is the final step, and by reaching the samadhi, one can attain the liberation also. That is what Patanjali Maharshi says in his Yoga Sutras. So as I already mentioned here about Bahiranga Yoga, yamas are self-restraint through behavior, niyamas are observances through discipline, asana is physical posture, that is Stiram Sukham Asanam, pranayama is breath regulation, pratyahara is withdrawal of senses. Next is Antaranga Yoga. Antaranga is internal practice, that is direct control over the mind. It has 3 limbs, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. So these are all comes under Ashtanga Yoga. Now coming to Bhakti Yoga. What is Bhakti Yoga? It is the yoga of devotion, where you show intense bhakti, love towards the deity or your chosen God. Your chosen God can be anyone, Rama, Krishna, Shiva, or Jesus, Allah, irrespective of religion. So whoever is your chosen deity or God, you can go in this marga called Bhakti Marga, Yoga of Devotion. By being a Bhakti Yogi, what happens is your individuality or ego disappears as you share your emotions, everything with your God, and hence you merge yourself in the ocean of bliss of the God's love. So in Bhakti, there are two types of Bhakti. One is Saguna Bhakti, second one is Nirguna Bhakti. Generally, Saguna Bhakti is more conducive for us because we need an object. Our mind is a chanchala, which doesn't stay stable. So if it stays stable, there is no Patanjali Yoga Sutras at all. So our mind nature is fickle mind. You call it monkey mind. So it just jumps from other branch to other branch like that. Our mind also jumps from one thought to other thought. So it is agitating. So in order to control your mind and focus it on single object, we use a Saguna Bhakti. Once the Saguna Bhakti ripens, you can enter into Nirguna Bhakti. So famous Bhakti yogis are Annamaya, Bhaktaram Das, Saint Kabir Das, Saint Tukaram, Mirabai, and also Tyagaraja, etc. These are all comes under famous Bhakti yogis. And also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he immerses himself into Lord Krishna, that you can see in this picture. So this is the most conducive yoga which everyone can do in this Kali Yuga. That is what Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to say. The Bhakti Yoga is the easiest of all the yogas that are available for the humankind in this Kali Yuga, because you need to only have is intense devotion and bhakti and self surrender to God. Those are the prerequisites for the Bhakti Yoga. Next, coming to the next topic is Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is of action. So inaction is not possible in this world. Everyone needs to do some or other action. Yes or no? So that action should be dharmic, and you should not feel that whatever action one person is doing, it is being done by him only, and the results also he will experience. Thinking about results will hamper the process also. Hence, the main theme of Karma Yoga is unselfish action and renouncing the fruits to the higher power. That is what Karma Yoga says. And also, Karma Yoga should be of dharmic nature. You cannot ask or you cannot say a terrorist a Karma Yogi because he is doing action, killing people. Yes or no? Right? So it should be dharmic. So some of the examples of Karma Yogis are Abdul Kalam, Vajpayee, and many soldiers who are working tirelessly in the border for protecting us. Those are also called Karma Yogis. Okay, moving forward. So Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is the knowledge. It's about the knowledge. Which knowledge? It's not about the intellectual sense of knowledge. I know I have PhD, so will I be Jnana Yoga? Absolutely not. Having materialistic knowledge doesn't guarantee you to be a Jnana Yogi. But which knowledge will give you that you are a Jnana Yogi is the knowledge of infinity, the knowledge of Brahman, that is the Paramatman, the higher consciousness, the supreme consciousness. How you will go and reach to that supreme consciousness? By questioning, who am I? Am I this body? Am I this mind? Why am I like this? What is suffering? What is happiness? Which is eternal? By questioning, one can go and reach to the stage of Jnana Yogi. So Upanishads are the best examples for the Jnana Yoga, where the beautiful philosophical thoughts are expressed in Upanishads, where the process is not this, not this. Neti in Sanskrit means not this, not this. No, I'm not this body. No, I'm not this mind. I'm something beyond. I'm the Atman. I'm the Brahman. Reaching slowly and gently by discriminating everything with Viveka. So they discriminate all the false sense and reach the higher state and realize themselves as the Brahman. Just knowing that I am a Brahman doesn't make you a Brahman or Jnana Yogi. They need to experience it through experiential knowledge of the self. So that is what Jnana Yoga is. Some of the best examples of Jnana Yogis are Ramana Maharshi and Adi Shankaracharya, where they talk about self, go deep into yourself, know who is suffering. So those philosophical talks would be very interesting. If you're interested in philosophy, I would advise you to go and check the book written by Who Am I by Ramana Maharshi. Next is, so why there are many kinds of yoga? There should be, if one yoga would be works good, right? Then why bhakti, karma, jnana, raja yoga? The answer is each and every one of us are unique. So we are not homogeneous. We are all heterogeneous, right? If everyone is same, then one yoga would suffice. But we are different. Everyone has different temperaments. So for them, for each and everyone, if you are emotional, I would ask you to go for bhakti yoga. If you're intellectual, if you want more questioning, if you're more into philosophical, then you go for jnana yoga. If you're more into meditation, then Raja Yoga is perfect for you. No, I don't believe in God or anything, but still I want to attain liberation. Then Karma Yoga, work. By working tirelessly with unselfish action, then you can be also go to the liberation. So hence liberation is open for everyone. It is not like other religions or anything where only some kind of people are allowed for higher thing, whereas every person is eligible for liberation if they practice their yoga according to their swabhavas. Okay. So next, is yoga considered as an exercise? I would say both yes and no, because hatha yoga, which is also part of yoga, is considered as an exercise because it consists of mainly of asanas. Number of asanas compiled in hatha yoga, we can refer as mudras. Bandhas are the locks, which you have Jalandhara Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, Mooladhara Bandha, and then mudras are just like Chin Mudra, different mudra, Bhairava Mudra, like that. You can have different type of mudras also, which helps you in stabilizing yourself and prepare yourself for Raja Yoga, that is to attain the Samadhi state. And also yoga is not just about asanas or anything, it's a philosophy and it's also way of life. We'll go and see it in the other slides. So importance of yoga in modern life. So why yoga now? Yoga is pretty ancient knowledge. Is it relevant to the modern life? So answer is yes. Yoga has immense benefits to both physical, psychological health. Some of them are yoga. By doing yoga asanas, it helps in strengthening and toning your physical body. And also yoga helps in lowering blood pressure, and it is also very good for reducing insomnia, because many people are suffering with insomnia because of night shifts or irregular pattern of sleep, which is creating a lot of havoc to their health. So for them, yoga is just like panacea. And then yoga regulates your adrenal glands. Adrenal glands are one of the endocrine glands, where it plays a key role in reducing the stress hormone called cortisol. So hence it is yoga helps in maintaining the cortisol levels optimal in our body. And also yoga helps in managing digestive disorders such as IBS or in indigestion, gastric, etc. Yoga helps in keeping allergies and viruses at bay. When you do yoga and pranayama perfectly, you will experience so much of improvement in your health, because all the impurities are being thrown outside and oxygenated blood is circulating inside, which helps in rebooting our system. Okay. And also yoga helps in keeping your spine healthy, thus protecting you against back and neck pains. So by doing different postures like bhujangasana, shalabhasana, etc., it works with entire spine, thus protects your spine from any alignments. So psychological importance of yoga is, yoga main purpose is to calm the turbulent mind. Our mind, I already told you, it's chanchala, it's monkey mind. It goes on to this, that, and it's always agitated. When the main goal of yoga is to keep mind calm. So hence, by keeping the mind calm, we will achieve the inner selves of bliss and happiness. And also, yoga helps you in managing your stress, because nowadays stress is part and parcel for each and everyone. due to the advanced technology and fast-paced life, everyone is prone to experience stress. So, and also chronic stress leads to various kind of diseases, right from cancer, viruses, pains, psychosomatic disorders, n number of diseases. Hence, in order to keep the chronic stress at bay, yoga is must. Yoga also helps for people suffering with anxiety disorders. Nowadays, people are suffering more with anxiety disorders because of the uncertainty. We don't know what is going to happen in future. Hence, they have irrational fears about the future. Hence, more prone to suffering from anxiety disorders. Yoga helps in improving emotional quotient. Emotional quotient is a very important thing for overall development of an individual. It's not just IQ. IQ can get you ranks, but EQ can make you live life happily and fulfillingly. So by being emotionally stable, you can do well in your work, you can do well with your relationships, either with your family or with your friends or with your relatives. And also emotional quotient is crucial factor for sustaining your mental health also. Yoga improves self-confidence and self-esteem. This is very important because without self-confidence, we will prone to get into depression and anxiety. Next, yoga as a way of life. So this is from today's class. The last slide is yesterday's class. Just have recap so that those who have joined today, they can get the glimpse of what happened yesterday. So how to lead yoga as a way of a life? Further, the first answer is you must follow yamas and niyamas without being moral and without being moral. You cannot go further because each and every wrongdoing will have a bad impression in your mind, in your chitta. So those bad impressions circulates. Even some of the thoughts which are suppressed are going to have very bad impact on your mind. So it is better not to suppress in meditation. Hence, you are advised to just observe your thoughts. Do not suppress your thoughts, but just observe your thoughts. That is what they say in meditation. And also, you need to adopt a yogic lifestyle by following yogic diet, yogic attitudes, and various yogic practices, which helps in strengthening ourselves and also which develop our positive health. Whereby by eating mitahara, yogic diet consists of eating only which is required for our body, not to indulge in sense pleasure. And also yogic attitudes like being positive or being optimistic will help you to lead a positive health and positive life. Next, yoga is an ancient way of life. It's not just a new phenomenon. It has been happening since 5,000 years. So you can see how much of impact it has created over those many centuries. So hence it is an ancient way of life that has existed for thousands of years, designed to free us from obstacles and liberate us from any fear. So yoga is not only just to reach the liberation, but also to help us to lead our day-to-day life more effectively and efficiently. Leading a yogic life is to live the life with awareness. That is what yoga is all about. Without awareness, it is not at all an yoga. It's just an exercise. So you should be present in the moment. That is very important for the yoga. So that is why the yoga is union of your body and the mind, union of your Atman with the Paramatman, union of the consciousness, individual consciousness with the supreme consciousness. That is what yoga means. Next, yoga is not just a destination, it is a journey. Just like I'm perfecting Sirsasana, headstand, which is the king of asanas. So I'm done with yoga. No, absolutely not. Yoga is a journey, it's a continuous process. You learn, you learn, you learn. And finally, when you achieve samadhi, that is a process where you get liberated. So it is a continuous process, it is not just a destination. So keep in your mind that yoga you should practice daily, regularly, without fail, and you should not get bogged down if if you're not performing as well as you've done yesterday, because it is quite common. That is why Patanjali has mentioned in his Yoga Sutra as Abhyasam Tan Abhyasa Vairagyam Tan Nirodha. Abhyasa is constant practice. Vairagyam is dispassion. Leaving all things aside and constantly working on your practice will help you in reaching the higher levels of yoga practice. That is what Patanjali Maharshi says. Next, it is all about how we live our life in tune with Dharma. Yes, without, if you do not follow Dharma, then there is no way of called yoga. Yoga is always in tune with Dharma. That is why initially the first two yamas and niyamas are in line with Dharma. So some of the misconceptions about yoga we're going to talk now. So some of the thing is yoga really for everyone, or is it for some persons who live in caves or in Himalayas and do tapas? The answer is yoga is for everyone. For the people who go and do tapas in Himalayas, they do advanced yogic practices which are suitable for them. Their goal of life is to achieve liberation. That is their goal. For them, that yoga suits. Whereas for householders, different kind of yoga suits. For them, you could be a bhakti yoga suits you, or jnana yoga suits you, or raja yoga suits you. So whichever yoga suits you, you should adapt to it. You should not make a frame of mind that yoga is for only those kind of people who live in Himalayas, or yoga is for people who are calm, or yoga is for people who are able to meditate. That is also a wrong misconception. Even though if you can't meditate, you can still be an yogi by following karma yoga or by following a bhakti yoga. So we'll just discuss some of the misconceptions about yoga. First one, yoga belongs to certain religion like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, etc. Yes, the roots of yoga belong to the religion because at that time Hinduism is most widely practiced religion in that region. Hence, some of the things might relate to the religion, but yoga doesn't restrict anyone to religion because yoga is a well-being. For well-being, you cannot restrict for one or two religions, right? Everyone requires well-being. Hence, by practicing yoga, irrespective of your religious status, you can achieve that well-being and happiness. Second one is yoga is only a post-retirement plan. Many people think that yoga is for people who are more than 60 years of old. So my question for them is only those people get suffering? Everyone suffers, right, in our life. So in order to keep or in order to be resilient to the suffering, yoga helps in resilience for the suffering. Hence I would request each and every one of you to adopt yogic practices daily, at least daily 10 minutes per day, doing simple pranayama and meditation, doing surya namaskaras would have an immense benefit for your physical and your psychological health also. So do not delay, even though it's better late than never, right? You might have loosened many of years without doing yoga, but yet it's the right time to start. Next, yoga is for sadhus living in the Himalayas. That's what I discussed earlier. So some people have misconception that if you're doing yoga while you're staying here, go to Himalayas. They say like that, right? So it is not only for the people living in Himalayas, it is for every individual in order to protect themselves from health, physical health, psychological health, and also to provide them with resilience and skills to face any challenges in life. Yoga is must. Next, yoga means just practicing asanas. So that is what you can see in the West. They fab about yoga. They do asanas. They keep in Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp that I'm doing this yoga or these kind of postures. I can do headstand, I can do handstand, etc. But when you look back into Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, asana is only one step out of 8 steps. Yes or no? Yes, right? One out of 8 steps cannot be called yoga. Asana is a subset of yoga, but only asanas doesn't constitute of yoga. If you do asanas, that is just a physical exercise. That's it. In order to deeper your practice, you should do asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, along with your yamas and niyamas. Then only it is called complete holistic yoga. So yeah, just a picture of sadhus in Varanasi. So they are also yogis, but their goal is different to our goals. Hence, we should not have that misconception that yoga is only for people who live in Himalayas or who leave everything, move out of their homes, and practice only yoga to attain liberation. Understand? So if you have any doubts, you can ask me either through unmuting yourself or through the chat. I hope I'm clear. Shall I move forward, or do you have any doubts till now? Okay, I'm going ahead now. So what is the goal of yoga? Everything should have a goal, right? Otherwise, why would we practice? For most of the people, goal of yoga would be weight loss. They say, I want to be in shape. That is why I'm joining yoga. So is losing weight the goal of yoga? Absolutely no. One of the benefit of doing yoga is losing weight. But the major and ultimate goal of yoga is liberation, which is called Kaivalya by Patanjali Maharshi. So Kaivalya is similar to liberation. If you go into Sankhya philosophy, there they talk about Prakriti and Purusha, but I don't want to go into that and confuse you. So for your understanding, Kaivalya is simply equivalent to liberation, where suffering ceases, where there is no suffering. Okay, that is called Kaivalya according to Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And Kaivalya can be reached only when you complete all the 8 steps, and during your Samadhi state, even after perfecting the Samadhi state, then only a person can attain Kaivalya. Okay, so which is roughly translated as liberation, but not equivalent meaning. So yeah, so absolute mastery, the reality, Kaivalya, Moksha, Nirvana, Brahma Nirvana, Brahman, these are all subsets of the liberation, which we all call. The Buddhists call it as Nirvana, the yogis call it as Kaivalya. So some of the scientists may call it the reality. So Advaita Vedantics call it as Brahman. So whichever path you choose, the final liberation thing is this. So that is the goal of yoga. The goal of yoga is to free us from pain and sufferings. Okay, am I clear? Shall I move forward? If you have any doubts, you can raise your hand or you can unmute yourself and ask me. Yeah. Now we are in a pretty uncertain times. Yes or no? Because of this pandemic COVID-19, which is creating a lot of troubles right from every household to every nations in the world. So of this COVID-19, we will discuss now. So yeah, there's a question from the chat box. I'm just reading it out. What if our minds get distracted while doing meditation? Yes, that is what I told you before, right? Our mind is chanchala. It is a monkey mind. Just like monkey jumps from one branch to other, it's doing all nonsense things. Our mind also jumps from one thought to other instantaneously. So further, the most important step is to calm your mind. How to calm your mind? By controlling your prana. That is why pranayama is most important step. Without pranayama you cannot go deeper into the dhyana or dharana itself. So hence, by mastering pranayama, simple pranayama, just inhale and exhale and watch your breath, just doing those simple techniques, you can minimize your distractions. While doing it constantly and continuously around some time, then you may get mastery over your distractions and your mind will fix into one pointedness. So that is my advice to you, Neha. I hope I cleared your question. Yeah, thank you. Now, going back to the yoga and its efficacy in tackling crisis of COVID-19. So yeah, COVID-19 is creating a lot of havoc. Many people are suffering directly because of by contracting the disease, and many people are suffering indirectly because of lockdown, economy, etc. There is another question from Harsha: is guided yoga available on YouTube good, or should we do on our own? Initially, doing guided yoga is advisable because you may not be able to control your thoughts that easily without external help. Hence, guided meditations are very good for starting, but don't depend on it completely, because once you get conditional to it, you can't close your eyes and meditate, because you get so much engrossed and tuned to it. Without that, you cannot meditate. So that should not be the case. It can help you for initial stages, but don't depend on it permanently. Is that clear? Yeah. Now moving ahead, yoga has many number of benefits in tackling any kind of crisis, not just COVID-19. Any kind of crisis, yoga will come for your rescue. So what are those? We'll see now. So first thing is, by doing yoga asanas, pranayama, these strengthen our body and helps in building our immunity. If you have strong immunity, you'll get milder version of COVID-19. Unfortunately, if you contract also, you can survive. That is the main advantage of doing yoga and pranayama. Not only just yoga and pranayama, you should also supplement it with good nutritious diet also. One more question I got: are all forms definition of moksha something attainable in life or believed to be something after life? It is indeed attainable in this life. That is why we talk about them, right? If it is just afterlife, we don't know whether there is afterlife there or not. But many yogis and sadhus have achieved their moksha or kaivalya in their present life itself. For example, I talk about Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Ramana Maharshi. They just discarded their body something like a disease. Even though they are suffering from cancer, they didn't feel the pain. They always have that charm in their face. If you look at their eyes, it has so much deep meaning in them. They didn't suffer at all. Even if we have small ache, backache, or like ache, we feel as if something world is ending. We need to take this anti-inflammatory drugs, etc. Whereas those people, those saints who have controlled their inner sense self and attain higher states, they have lived such a life where you can see that they have attained moksha in this life itself. That is what we can infer from the great saint's life. I hope I cleared your question, Nikhil. Yes, we can achieve in this life with constant practice, but again, for that, there are some limitations. Because of our previous karmas, we may not achieve it in this life. But the answer also in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that, so in whichever step you've got ended, you can continue from that step in your next life. That is what Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So whatever you perform in this life will not go in vain. Either you can attain moksha or you can carry forward it to your next life. Okay, now moving forward. So by doing yoga and pranayama, it helps in strengthening our body and also internal organs, thus helps in building our immunity, which fights against any kind of diseases. Yoga also helps in tackling stress, anxiety, and fear, which is what is plaguing each and every one of us when this pandemic will over, when the vaccine comes, or we need to live with this forever, when we can go to the movie theaters, or when we can go and meet our friends and all, or when we can travel. So these are the questions, anxieties, fears we all have. But just fearing doesn't make anything, right? So it adds to your stress, which again reduces your immunity. Hence, you will be susceptible to any kind of diseases, including COVID-19. So hence, leaving everything aside, doing yoga, asanas, pranayama helps you in tackling the stress, anxiety, and fear. And also, one more suggestion is reduce your news watching, because they portray more negative things than positive things, because they want to scare people out. So better to avoid news. If you want to watch news, just watch for half an hour from reliable sources, not those hyper channels who make sensational out of everything. So that also helps in maintaining your stress levels optimum. Next is yoga boosts your inner strength and makes you resilient. So yes, even though if unfortunately anyone contracted COVID or any other disease, they should not feel bogged down. If you perform yoga, pranayama, everything, you will have that inner strength. Yes, I can recover. That inner will can crush the mountains. That is what Swami Vivekananda says. If you have strength, you can conquer anything. If you are weak, weakness is death. Yes or no? See, if you do not have confidence or inner strength in yourself, even small diseases can kill you. Whereas if you have inner strength and belief that you can come over it, then surely and definitely you can come over any kind of crisis. So for that, yoga helps you in achieving that inner strength. As already I told you about nutrition, yoga coupled with nutritious diet helps in quicker recovery from any kind of illness or diseases. So our body needs proper nutrition. It is just like a fuel. Nutrition is fuel to our body. If fuel is not there, vehicle don't run. Our body is a fuel, and the diet, nutritious diet, is a fuel. That is a good fuel. If you take junk diet, that is somewhat fabricated fuel, which will trouble your engine. Initially, it may not trouble, but over a time, it troubles so hard that the damage is irreplaceable. So, hence, having a nutritious diet coupled with yoga is very advisable for everyone of you. So now COVID generally attacks your lungs. So pranayama helps in maintaining optimum lung capacity. And also lungs is the place where oxygenation of blood takes place. So each and every cell in our body requires oxygen for its repairing and rebuilding. Hence, by utilizing our full lung capacity, by following pranayamas, it helps in strengthening your each and every cell of your body. Okay. Next, yoga helps to go inwards instead of going outward. So that is what yoga is. Yoga, you discover your own self. Your self-awareness increases. You know more about yourself. Your own body is universe itself. So hence going inside will help you a lot rather than going in for sense pleasure or outside things. And also going inward and inside is better than going outside in this turbulent time because of COVID-19. And also try to maintain, if you go out, maintain social distancing with proper sanitization and masks. Am I clear? If you have doubts, you can again ping me in the chat box. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Otherwise, I'll go ahead. We'll do some practice for today. Enough of talk. Let's do some practice. Because all talks makes nothing. It is the practice. Abhyasam is important. So we have learned some basic theory about yoga. Let us apply that theory into practice for today. As today is International Yoga Day, so you also participate in this event. Okay, are you ready for this? So if you have doubts, it's better to clear now, because after we go into the practice, we may or we may not have enough time to discuss. Okay, done now. So the practices for today are as follows. First, we'll do gentle inhalation and exhalation, that is observing with breath. So many of you are asking the questions how to control our mind, how to control our thoughts, how to protect our mind from distractions. For that, the first thing, gentle inhalation and exhalation is very, very helpful. Next, we're going to do one simple pranayama technique called Brahmari Pranayama, which is pretty simple. There is no contradiction. Every person can do it, except for person who is suffering from any ear infection, or if you have any surgeries to ear. Except for them, any person can do it. Along with it, we'll do a short yoga nidra, and we'll end with Om meditation. That is the practice for today. So first of all, I just want you to relax yourself, sit in wherever position you are. Just sit in chair. If you're sitting, it's okay, you can sit in chair. If you want to sit down, you can sit down. There is no restriction, but the important thing is your neck spine should be straight. That is the important thing while doing pranayama and meditation, because when you are straight, your lungs have the room to for the inhalation and the exhalation. Whereas if you are slouched, your muscles are already contracted, hence you'll not get full range of motion for your lungs to inhale and exhale. So I'll just stop sharing the screen now. Okay, so first sit straight, neck, back, everything straight. We gently start with Omkaram thrice. Close your eyes gently. You can place your hands in Chin Mudra. This is a Chin Mudra. Inhale deeply. Now follow my instructions. Do not open your eyes. Do not pay attention to any thoughts. If thoughts come, let them come. But you should pay your attention only to your breath. So first do normal inhalation and exhalation. Inhale and exhale deeply and gently through your nostrils. Observe right from the nostril where the air enters. Feel your body and observe. Observation is pretty important. By observing your breath, you can arrest your thoughts. Hence, you can control your mind. Now observe your belly with each inhalation and exhalation. How is your belly responding? With inhalation, your belly rises. With exhalation, your belly goes inside. Now observe that. Along with your breath, observe and synchronize your breath with your belly movements. Now we'll start doing rhythmic breathing. Rhythmic breathing is just like 1:1 ratio. Here 1:1 ratio means if you inhale for 5 counts, you should also exhale for 5 counts. I'm just giving 5 as a random number. If you are new for pranayama, minimum of 3 counts is also good enough. If you are expert or if you are practicing pranayama, you can go till 8 count. I'll just explain you. I'll count the numbers for 5. You can also follow that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now again inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last round. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now just observe your normal breathe in and breathe out. Observe your breathing. Do not force any breath. Just observe the natural flow of your breath through your nostrils and feel your breath. Feel that cool air is going inside through your nostrils, filling your lungs, and little warm air is coming out of your nostrils. If any unwanted thoughts come, do not pay attention to them. Just only focus on the breath. Don't worry that you are unable to concentrate. Mind's nature is to wander. Hence, whenever mind is wandering, that is, you're doing good thing. You're observing that your mind is wandering. Hence, again, get back to the breathing practice. Now we'll go for Yoga Nidra. This I'll guide you. You need to just follow my instructions. You need not do anything. There is no goal in it. The only step is you need to follow my instructions carefully and focus on whatever I'm saying. Understand? So first, inhale deeply and hold your breath. Tighten your whole body. Now exhale through your mouth. Exhale completely. Feel the relaxation. When you inhale and hold your breath, your entire body is tensed. Every muscle is tense. So once when you exhale through your mouth, when you exhale through your mouth, get into relaxation. I request everyone to mute your Again, inhale deeply. One more time, we'll do the same thing. Inhale and hold your breath, and then exhale with your mouth. Okay. Inhale. Hold your breath. Exhale through your mouth. Feel the relaxation. Feel the relaxation. Feel the relaxation. Now just focus on whichever part I tell you, focus on the part. First, focus on your toes, both toes at a time. Focus on your toes. Feel your toes. If you can feel any tingling or any sensation, or if you don't find any sensation, that is also good. But make sure that you are focusing your entire attention on your feet, on your both right and left feet. Each and every finger, upper part of the feet, both soles, both ankles. Observe any sensations. Any minor sensations also observe it. Feel the sensation. Feel your body. Now with deep inhalation, focus on your legs from ankle to knees. Feel your both legs, right leg and left leg. Feel your calf muscles. If you're finding any tingling, throbbing sensation, observe it. Now from your knees to the hips, observe your both right thigh and left thigh. Observe keenly and closely. Your entire range of attention should be only on your thighs from knees to hips. Again with deep inhalation, right from your toes to the hips, feel your entire lower body. Observe your sensations. There might be tingling, throbbing, itching, any sensation. Just record it, observe it. Now moving up Inhale deeply. Observe your belly movements with your breath. Each inhalation, your belly rises up. With each exhalation, it goes inwards. This kind of breathing is called diaphragmatic breathing, which is very helpful in relaxing your body. Now fix your attention to the lower back, buttocks, lower back, and now again with deep inhalation, focus your attention on your torso or near your chest. Where you can feel your ribs with each inhalation, expanding and contracting. Observe, feel, now again with deep inhalation, focus on your upper chest, near your collarbone. Keep yourself relaxed. Do not tighten any body. Keep as much relaxed as possible. Next, bring your focus to your both hands. First to the both palms, right and left palms, and then to the all fingers, and then to the hand till your arm, till your elbow. Observe, and then from your elbow to your shoulder joint, both hands, both right and left hand. Observe the sensation. You have many muscles there, biceps. Feel those muscles. If you can go deep into the practice, you can also feel the blood circulation also. Now, again with your inhalation, focus on your shoulders. Generally, shoulders are the place where a lot of tension in the muscles takes place. So release all the tensions in your shoulder muscles. Relaxing your shoulders. Now focus on your shoulder blades. Relax your shoulder blades. Observe your shoulder blades. Feel your shoulder blades. Now feel your entire back, entire spinal cord, right from your neck to the tailbone. Observe. Now observe your head, top of your head, sides of your head, along with your face. Observe the forehead, eyes, eyebrows, eyebrow center, nose, cheeks, tongue, lips, chin, and your front part of your neck. Now you're relaxed each and every part of your body. Stay in that relaxation for a few more seconds. To normal inhalation and exhalation, observe your breath. So now just rub your both palms gently. Place it on your face. Massage your face and eyes. Slowly and gently open your eyes. Look at your palms. Release your hands. I hope you had a good session by doing these things, because these are the prerequisites to go into the next stage of pranayama meditation. I'll briefly take you to the pranayama. Now you need to observe me. That's why I asked you to open your eyes. The simplest of pranayama is Bhramari pranayama. It has n number of benefits. It is very beneficial for your nervous system. It also soothes and calms your mind. Hence, we will do this pranayama and end the session. So if you are okay, you need to place your thumb and close your ears. You have a little cartilage here in the ear. Near your ear opening, you have a cartilage. You need to close your ears with this thumb. First, I'll perform and show to you. You observe it. Once you know about it, how to perform, then you perform for 2 to 3 rounds. Okay? I'll just show you now. Just observe me. You need to close your ear flaps with your thumb. And your other fingers, 4 fingers are placed on your forehead, your eyes, and slightly on your nose, but you should not block your nose. Understand? Now inhale deeply. While exhalation, you should do sound, makara sound. Bhramari is called bee sound, bee meditation. Bhramari means wild female bee, honey bee, you know, right? It makes a sound of so that sound you need to make. So the important step here is it is pranayama. You need to control your breath. Hence, how much you're inhaling, you should exhale it that much only, so that it would be pranayama. Otherwise, if you inhale long and exhale very short, that is not pranayama. I'll just perform it for you, demonstrate it for you, observe it, and once you feel confident that you can do it, you can do it in this session now. Okay? Now inhale deeply. Again, inhale. This is called Bhramari pranayama. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. I'll clarify your doubts. If you don't have any doubts, you can perform it for 3 rounds. And after you perform, just close your eyes. We will do 3 omkaras and end the session with prayer. So if you have doubts, you can ask me now regarding this pranayama. Am I clear to everyone? This pranayama is called Bhramari pranayama. You need to close your ear flaps with your both thumbs respectively, and then close your forehead, eyes with the other fingers, and deeply inhale. While exhaling, you should do the makara sound, sound, and do it for minimum of 3 to maximum of 5 rounds. Once you have finished your practice, just do not open your eyes. Observe your surroundings. Feel the calmness. Feeling the calmness is very important in this pranayama. Observe the silence. I hope everyone has finished their 5 rounds of pranayama, maximum, minimum of 3 rounds also. So I would continue the Om chanting. I just chant, you also chant along with me. Here the important thing is is consists of Omkara. So have a pause for one Omkara and other Omkara and feel the silence and calmness. That gap between the both Omkaras is what is called as some of the blissful state. I want you to experience that blissful state in this little Om meditation we do. So I'll do also along with you. You can do along with me, observe me, and try to chant along with me also. But do not open your eyes. You can just listen. Listening will do good. But make sure that you are sitting straight, back straight, neck straight, adjusting your body if it needs to adjust it. Hands in a relaxed posture. Inhale deeply. Again, inhale deeply. Again, inhale deeply. Inhale deeply. Inhale. Now focus on the center of your heart. Feel the oneness. Grateful for whatever things you have in your life. Now join your hands. We'll do the concluding prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ तत्सत् Brahmarpanamastu. You can give it to the higher self because we are not taking it to our own self. Then our ego rises. We are giving it, we are offering our meditation also to the higher power. Now gently, slowly rub your palms as much as you can so that heat should be generated between your palms. Now place your palms on your eyes. Stay there for a few seconds. Slowly and gently massage your eyes and face. Open your eyes. Look at your palms. Release your hands. Dhanyavadaha. Thank you so much for participating in this wonderful session. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. And again, sorry for taking a lot of time because meditation takes time and I want to give you an experiential thing. I just don't want to just give you only theoretical knowledge. I want you to experience yourself and get the feel of yoga so that it will give you an impetus to start practicing yoga from tomorrow because already I've started today. We're doing simple pranayama and meditation.